Hey there, friends. There's a story that happened last week that not many people have heard about. And I think it's because the mainstream media were trying to bury this late in the week. But first, go check out my friends, Attorneys on Retainer. I mentioned in a video a couple of weeks ago that insurance companies will keep you out of the poorhouse, but attorneys will keep you out of the big house. Attorneys on Retainer does just that. There are only 3 qualifiers for coverage. These are if you're charged with a crime, misdemeanor, or a felony, that you reasonably and in good faith assert self-defense as a defense to the criminal charge that you are being charged with. And of course, the third qualifier, you have to have already been a customer of Attorneys on Retainer prior to making that very important phone call to them. They are owned by a criminal defense law firm, not just backed by an insurance company. They won't drop you from coverage or ask you to pay them back. They offer plans with uncapped attorney's fees and court costs for both your criminal and civil defense. Go to attorneysonretainer.us. Again, attorneysonretainer.us. When you sign up, use my discount code FTATF and get a massive discount on your policy. Again, FTATF for huge savings, attorneysonretainer.us. A federal judge in Florida on Friday ruled that a U.S. law that bars people from possessing firearms in post offices is unconstitutional, citing the landmark U.S. Supreme Court ruling from 2022 that expanded gun rights that is brewing as we know it. U.S. District Court Judge Catherine Kimball Mizell, an appointee of Republican former President Donald Trump in Tampa, reached that conclusion in dismissing part of an indictment charging a postal worker with illegally possessing a gun in a federal facility. Mizell said that charge violated Emmanuel Ayala's right to keep and bear arms under the U.S. Constitution's Second Amendment, saying, quote, a blanket restriction on firearms possession in post offices is incongruent with the American tradition of firearms regulation. Now, Ayala, who was a driver for the post office, he carried concealed at work all the time in his little fanny pack. How they found out, unless he bragged about it, stupid, keep your mouth shut. Unless he bragged about it, I'm not sure how they came to the conclusion that he had that gun on him and they arrested him. Now, how stupid. A true victimless crime. I see a lot of these types of crimes as victimless, but this is a guy who worked there, who was no threat there. And when federal agents actually went to apprehend him, he ran. Now, that's kind of stupid, but I mean, what was he going to do? Where was he going to go? They knew who he was, where he worked, and all that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, they caught him. They charged him with the gun crime, and they charged him, or the possession crime, and they charged him with fleeing. Now, the charge of the gun crime was dropped, obviously, because of this decision by this judge. The fleeing crime, they're still trying to hit him with, but obviously that crime is likely to not stick, because if the charges are dropped for the crime you ran as a result of, I don't think the other crime is going to stick. But nevertheless, this is one of those places, and a beautiful thing, where they have found that history and tradition does not allow them to prohibit firearms from there. Mizell said that while post offices have existed since the nation's founding, federal law did not bar guns in government buildings until 1964 and post offices until 1972. No historical practice dating back to the 1700s justified the ban. Mizell said allowing the federal government to restrict visitors from bringing guns into government facilities as a condition of admittance would allow it to, quote, abridge the right to bear arms by regulating it into practical non-existence. Now, personally, guys, I know close personal friends of mine who have always carried in post offices. I'm not going to mention their names because I know them really well, but they've always carried in post offices. There is no reason why people should not be able to carry in a post office. The reason why, obviously, these types of laws even came into existence is because most of these politicians have put laws into place that have screwed so many people over that the politicians themselves fear the general public because of all the damage they've done to them. So they've thrown this blanket of no firearms on federal property because of them, not the post office. They never really intended on the post office to have no guns brought onto the premises, simply because those politicians aren't there. This is a way to make it look like we're trying to protect all of our federal facilities, when what they really mean is Congress and wherever their offices are. If they have a public office out in their own district or somewhere, they're trying to make sure that that is now designated as a federal piece of property and you can't carry a gun. Again, because of the damage politicians have done to people. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's right. But the damage that they have done to people over all these years makes them susceptible to attacks from the general public because they have been screwed over so bad. I'm not condoning any kind of violence or whatever against these politicians because I believe karma will give them rectal cancer or whatever that will give them plenty of what they've had coming to them. I'm just saying they implemented that because they needed to keep the general public away from them, and post offices just kind of got thrown into that. This is a beautiful thing. I think that Bruin is going to do more and more and more unraveling of these unconstitutional laws out there across the land. The issue is people are not just going to change the rules and quote laws at some of these places because the court system, somebody has to be wronged first, and then they go to court and then they undo those laws. So it's sad that that's how it has to happen. Somebody has to be screwed over before it reaches that level of attention by the court system. I would also like to mention one other place that has been in existence the same amount of time, if not long, well, definitely longer than post offices, where guns are not allowed and where people are targeted in those particular areas because guns are not allowed, which makes it a very soft target and a kill zone, if you will. I'm talking about schools. It's time we protect our children and remove these stupid signs that scream soft target.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
He's over!